There we go. Cool. Sweet. Yeah, so there's been a lot of talk around kind of the future of chatbots. You've seen kind of Facebook Messenger builds AI into some of their bots. Slack has a huge platform for it. Microsoft Teams, like everyone's doing chatbots these days. So I thought this could be kind of a cool topic to talk about. In particular, I'm kind of interested in how chatbots could help solve some of the problems maybe we encounter in our own community. So with that, my name is Jason Carter. I'm a software engineer at Mavenlink. I've been doing software development for like 3 years now. 4. Actually, Ben taught me at DevPoint in the second DevPoint class.
4 years ago?
Yeah, it's about 4 years ago. Worked at a few companies since. Mavenlink's pretty cool. It's been fun. But yeah, a lot of history with Church and State, a lot of history with boot camp, so it's always exciting to see new people come into the field. So let's talk kind of a little bit about Slack. So how many people here are actually part of the Utah Ruby user group Slack channel? Okay, so a fair amount. If you're not, we'll get you signed up at some point. We're actually going to use that a little bit today. But I know that since I've been here, I've used that channel a lot. I've used it to ask for help. I've used it to meet people. I've used it to find jobs. The job I found at Mavenlink was actually through a Slack message from a guy I only knew on that Slack channel. And so I spent a lot of time there. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to show some of the stats about the Slack channel. So over the time it's been around, we've sent about 460,000 messages. This was on Sunday. We've used way more than our file storage limit, so you probably see notifications all the time about that. We're kind of on the free plan right now. This is our active users chart. So we have about 53 daily active, about 10 posting messages daily. That was kind of on the weekend, but you can see kind of like this is sort of our weekly active users. So not too bad for a small Ruby community Slack group. A lot of stuff happens in direct messages, particularly on weekends. It generally looks like, for the most part, you know, we're doing stuff in public channels, private channels, but really mostly direct messages, which I thought was kind of interesting. I think you have to be an admin to do this stuff, but you know, the point I guess is like, this is a big community, regionally big. We want it to be bigger, and so how can we build some better tools to support this community and make it all it can be? And so with that in mind, here's sort of the framework of the talk. We're going to talk a little bit about how I got into building Slackbots, why this is interesting to me. I'm going to show you how to build a Slackbot in Ruby. So I actually have the example repository slides in the deck will be available afterwards too, so that when we start, you can just clone it down and start hacking away if you want. Or you can check out different branches to see kind of more advanced functionality. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about like what is possible. What are the things you can do with this if you wanted to? And I'll show some examples from Mavenlink and also just from examples I've found on the internet. And yeah, we'll have some time to hack on our own bots. So hopefully you brought your computers. I don't know. I'm curious to see how many tokens they'll let us get. So we might have to all share a token or save a bunch of integrations for the night, but we'll figure it out. Cool. So to start off, how did I get into this? At its core, one thing that's true about software development is really all you're doing is solving problems for people with code. Whether that's a business problem, it might be, you have like some script you need to run to clean up some data, but really it's all about solving problems. And some problems can be a tiny bit petty. And so the petty problem that got me into Slackbot was actually for a friend of mine at the last company I worked at, Master. So we had a push-ups channel that was started kind of as a New Year's resolution type thing. Every so often someone would at channel and say, okay, 10 push-ups, and everyone would go down and do it. You can imagine that got really old after a while. Everyone realized that we're developers, we kind of just like to sit at our desks, write code. And so Phil in particular got really annoyed with this and made a big show of leaving. And this one guy at the company would invite him back every time. Every day, Phil would get invited back to the channel and get at channeled again. So I thought, I'm a programmer, I could probably do something about this. So you can't see this super well, but I actually don't have that old Slack group and Slack has since changed their API a bit. But I wrote a bot that would basically kick just Phil anytime he got invited back to the channel. And so I had that running one day. I knew that he was going to get invited back, and he would say, "Guys, I really don't want to do this." He left. Someone brought him back in, and the bot says, "I don't think Phil wants to be push-ups anymore." Does a quick countdown and kicks him back out of the channel. So I actually won because how can you fight robots? The guy tried a couple more times. The bot worked a couple more times, and then he was never invited back again. I turned off the bot, and life was good. And so for me, that was like really, really cool. Like I thought, oh yeah, this is kind of fun. Like this is a different problem to solve. It's not, necessarily really important, but it was fun just to see the look on this guy's face. And so I kind of started doing little scripts now again. So I wrote a little bot. We had an interesting incident where we thought we needed to delete a bunch of our messages one time. So I wrote a bot that deleted all the messages in a channel that you had sent. I wrote a bot. This one was, I don't know if you guys know Ryan Holdy on Slack. He had disabled @ channels, I think, in the URUG Slack. So you can't @ channel or @ here unless you have admin rights. And I thought, well, I still want to get everyone's attention. So just for fun, I wrote a bot that would go through the whole list of users in the channel and manually add @ that user for every user in the channel. So you could @ channel by just messaging everyone. And that was pretty cool. I never actually deployed that, but it was kind of fun. All these are on my GitHub. They're kind of really old and not great, but I think they still work. So those are some problems, right? They're not, deleting messages, like a little sketchy, right? Notifying people, to kind of out of spite of Holdy in particular, not super great, but what other problems can we solve? So I didn't really do much with Slackbots for a while. I kind of was finished with it, hadn't really worked on it in a long time. So I started working at Mavenlink, where we had some problems that it turned out a bot was pretty good to solve. So the first problem is that it's hard to know when someone has deployed to production. So we're constantly deploying all the time. We aren't quite a continuous deploys yet. We have a pretty complicated system. And so if someone was deployed and VPN'd in, you didn't want to, someone else might try and deploy. You wanted to make sure everyone knew that their code was going out. Another thing that, kind of ties along with it is what has someone deployed to production? So if you're waiting for a deploy and you can't do it yourself, you want to be able to quickly see, oh, did my change make it out with this deploy? And so that led to MabBot. So MabBot is our internal Slack bot that we use for all kinds of stuff, but kind of one of the first real uses of this, you can't again see super well, sorry about that, is the announce deploy command. So you can pass it a hit.sha, and it will generate a deploy diff, so you can see kind of based off what's on production, current SHA, what's going out, and kind of look at that, right? So that was pretty cool. That sufficed for a long time, and it was really, really helpful. Then another problem kind of came out. So we write an internal deploy email that we send out to everyone at the company, which is basically like, hey, here's all the user-facing changes that went out with that deploy. Mainly so that people can keep track of if they had a bug reported by a customer or if they were looking for some functionality. And that was painful, particularly if someone hadn't deployed in a day. You would have potentially 20 pull requests to look at. You'd have to go into each one and find a deploy description. People didn't always write really good deploy description. So I got kind of tired of that. Really what happened is I was really fed up with it. I hated writing them. And so I rewrote MabBot in Ruby because I don't really like JavaScript that much. And wrote this. So MabBot now will actually list out all the pull requests with a link to it, who deployed it, so you can see kind of what work's going on, who worked on it. It'll actually write a deploy email for you by looking at the pull requests on GitHub and finding out the deploy description. So that was pretty cool. It'll even try and give you a suitable farewell human name. I'm hoping someday it'll actually know who you are and just autofill that out, and I don't know, maybe find a limerick or something so that's funny. We used to have funny deploy emails because people would put in the time to write something clever, and so now everyone just uses this and they're not as good. But yeah, so I got really excited about it. I'm spending a lot of time. We have Friday time, afternoon, essentially to work on whatever we want, within reason. So I've been working on MabBot. So we have a team that likes to do kind of asynchronous retros and stand-ups. So how can we use MapBot to kind of plan and manage the stand-ups? Pretty cool. If our master build goes red, Circle is what we use for CI. So that just runs all our tests in the cloud for those of you who are kind of newer. And it will basically return, oh yeah, everything passed or didn't. Their API is not super great, and so they will actually just send you notifications for every build. It's really hard to get them to send you a notification for one build. And so I wrote something that I'm working on where it will just get the Circle webhooks and notify, very loudly that master is red so that someone can go and investigate. We also started using MapBot to assign code reviewers, and so it'd be cool if you could say like, hey, what tickets am I assigned to, or what code review do I have to do? Just kind of, for me, I like a lot of my stuff in Slack. I've configured it so that it shows me as much information as possible. And so these are kind of thoughts that we're, working on a little bit. So how do I do it? How do you make a Slack bot, right? That's the next portion of our talk. So it's actually not really that hard. There's some great libraries out there that I've utilized. So some of those earlier scripts that I used or talked about use something called Slack Ruby Client. So this provides a really simple way to just authenticate to Slack, listen for messages, and post messages. Slack Ruby Bot kind of gives you a little bit more. It gives you sort of a bot instance that runs. It has more of a command structure so that you can make sure that it will respond to commands, give help descriptions, etc. And then Slack Ruby Server kind of builds on top of that and allows you to actually build a full, what's called Slack bot application. And so you can basically have like one-click install to your Slack platform. You can manage multiple bots. So that's more if you like want to build something that you would actually market to people. So this is maintained by a guy his name's D-Block. He's done a bunch of different Ruby libraries. He's done some, a lot of the Slack stuff. It's really, really, really responsive too. I actually found an issue with this while I was prepping the talk. I'm probably going to have to fix it because he wants me to do it. But super nice, like pointing me in the right direction. So if you're looking for an open source project to contribute to, this is actually pretty cool. There's a lot of fun stuff in there. And they're just great. They come with some testing helpers, etc. So links for this are in the talk. You'll get to see that later. We're going to focus kind of on Slack Ruby Bot because that kind of is kind of it's the sweet spot essentially. It gives you the tools that you need to build one bot for one team that has a lot of functionality. Cool. So with that in mind, considering that we're using these to solve problems, we're going to solve another one with this sort of example bot I'm going to show you guys. And that's that I really can't keep up with Reddit like I used to anymore. At Mavenlink, we pair programs, so it's pretty obvious when I'm on Reddit. And so I want to be able to do that in Slack with the bot. I want to send it a private message, so maybe something a little bit like this. Tell me what posts are rising in the politics subreddit. I want to know what did Trump do this time, or what's going on. I also chose this because it's actually pretty simple and can show us a few things that Slackbots can do in kind of the full capability of a very basic bot. So if we look at this, right, there's a few things going on here. So one, we have to be able to listen for a command. So in this case, the bot will have to respond to Reddit. That's the command that it's listening for. We want to basically grab two arguments from that. So what is the subreddit that I want to go find? And how am I filtering these? So Reddit, you can have hot, new, controversial, top, rising. And so we want to ideally let someone choose the sort order. We're actually going to have to make an API call. So we're going to have to talk to Reddit to get posts and bring it back. Ideally, it should look reasonably nice. Slack actually has some really cool formatting tools for messages and such. And a late addition to the talk is handle server errors, because it turns out if you don't use an official Slack or a Reddit API key, they rate limit you very aggressively. So hopefully it's been enough time that they won't know that my bot is using the API without authorization. So we'll see all of this in this example. Cool. Right on. So this is the part I haven't practiced. So I'm not going to live code, don't worry. But I do have a repo that you guys will all have access to afterwards. And I'm just going to kind of walk through some of this with you, and we can kind of see what's going on.
All right, cool. So we're on master. Sweet. So I gotta embiggen this probably. Oh yeah, man. Yeah, it's presentation mode, right? Sweet.
So at the core of this is sort of your bot, right? So this is just going to be
Generally a place where you can document your commands and kind of describe things about your bots. In this case, we're saying that we have a command called command and we're going to document it. It's going to be great. Another thing you can put in here is listeners. So the example I'm going to show is actually you messaging the bot directly in a channel that it's in, and with a command it'll respond. But there's a lot of power to actually respond to events or look for specific words. So if anyone ever types ship it anywhere in a Maven Link Slack channel where Mabbot is, it'll post a squirrel. And so that's an example of like a listening command. And we'll talk more about some other events later. Cool. So I wonder if you can view this. Awesome. So this is like the basic structure of a bot. So there's actually, like I said, the repo has all this. You'll be able to pull it down. We're just going to kind of walk through sort of basics of it. There's also a really great tutorial on the repo. So to run the bot, we've basically created like a pretty simple script here. So we're just importing the files that we need. We're requiring our bot, and we're going to run it in a thread. I'm using .env. Are people familiar with that? You are, yeah. That's because you don't want tokens on GitHub. So .env lets you basically set up secret data or tokens that you want your app to use and load them and commit and not commit them to source control. So typically you'll have like a .env.sample. So in this case, we need just like a Slack API token. And when you run the bot, it's going to just search for that token, and that's kind of how it gets set up and started. All right. So the main thing we're going to look at and where most of the magic is going to happen is going to be in this command class.
So there's a few things to notice. Basically, we define a command.
So in this case, we've just called it command because I'm lazy. And we get 3 arguments whenever this is called. So essentially, if someone were to go in Slack and say Reddit-bot command, it's going to call this method. And so we get a client, which is basically the Slack client. It allows us to say things to the channel, to look up things in the API. We get the data, which is essentially like an object or a hash of information about that message. So who sent it? What channel was it in? What is the text? And then we get a match variable. So what that is that's going to be anything that came after the command. So in our example, we were looking at, someone would say, at Reddit-bot, Reddit, and then like, politics rising. So our data object would look kind of like, it would have this text here, it would have the channel, and then this match object would be the remaining arguments. That's pretty cool. That means that you can kind of have a base command and then a bunch of smart commands. So I could have like a post command, and then anything afterwards could be like different things people could do. In this case, we're using it to take options, so a sort order and subreddit. What's kind of unfortunate is that people will type things in a billion different ways, so you have to write some of your own logic to kind of handle that, which we'll see in a minute. But that's it. Like, we could deploy this bot now. Let's try it out and see if it works. So in this case, we're just running the bot. You can see it will connect to Slack. Again, this library is awesome. It does just about everything for you. It makes it really easy. So we can see that it's connected to Utah Review User Group. And if we pop over to Slack, he's going to be in here, and we can say Reddit bot hi. And there it is. And we can actually call our command with 2 M's. That's awesome, right? Not a ton of stuff going on here. There are, some kind of boilerplate stuff that you have to set up. You need a Reddit bot RB that kind of requires the library, requires all your commands. Like, this isn't Rails, you have to, it's just plain old Ruby, which is actually really nice. we could kind of look at just to sort of see. Here is kind of that object we got. So let's actually just grab that out and look at it real quick. So, you know, this is sort of talking a little bit earlier about what we got earlier. Let's see. Awesome. So there's our object. So we can see what the type was. We can see the title. I guess this is actually a desktop notification, but typically things look a little bit like this. Cool. So let's step a little bit forward in time and talk a little bit about stuff we can do. All right. So generally, you put featured stuff in this command. There's actually an MVC mode that it has that I won't get to in this, but is in the repo if you want to look at it. And so we're going to do something, you know, a little bit smarter. So I'm using just pure Ruby for this. I should probably use HTTP party because HTTP is a little meh. But essentially, we're saying, okay, for now, we're not going to take any commands, any arguments at all. Let's just get some data. And so all we do is like we can make API calls in here. You can use whatever you want. It's just Ruby. Throw some stuff in your gem file. I didn't really want to get too complicated with it. And so what I'm doing is I am just making a call to Reddit /rall and pulling down whatever I get from there, right? I'm then going through my response. I'm kind of formatting it a little bit nicer into an object that I like that responds a little bit better. And for each of those objects, I'm going to just say something to the channel. So I'm using the data channel, so I'm posting back to whatever channel I was mentioned in. You can actually use it to, you know, post wherever you want if you so desired. And it's just going to be the post title, the link, the URL, and the score. So let's run this real quick, and we can just see that kind of going. Like I said, we might get rate limited, so it's the problem with live coding. I do have a GIF of it in action if this doesn't work. And yep, undefined method for nil class, so we're getting rate limited. But theoretically, there we go. There's some stuff, right? So this is the top post on Reddit at the moment. Russia's a thing, I guess. Here's a cool. That's pretty sweet. And then what else? About to sacrifice his force. Wow, that's sad. Yeah, so you never know what you're gonna get on our all. So we're gonna go ahead and start adding some stuff where we can like do a little bit more selective. That's more interesting anyways. Like I want to check specific subreddits. But so that's simple, right? Here's the object, we made our call. Here's the stuff that we got back and we just send it off. So that's sort of, you know, at its basic. So that we can get some more time for people to actually work on some stuff, I'm going to jump a little bit in time, but you're welcome to check out this repo and look through each step. I kind of documented each thing as it went along. So we're going to implement subcommands, we're going to implement sorting, and formatting, and eventually a progress indicator. So let's jump to progress indicator, and I can kind of walk through some of the code here. All right, so this is going to look quite a bit different. Cool. Let's see. There we go. Nice. All right. So this looks reasonably complicated. It's not too bad. It's about 100 lines. Eventually, we'll want to start extracting this out and stuff. But here's like a lot of the functionality you can do. So you can see here, I've got my args object, and I'm splitting it so that I can get separate words, and then I'm like grabbing stuff off of that. So we can like go in and say, all right, here's my subreddit. It's going to be the first thing in the array, or I'm going to default it to all. Here's my sort by. I'm going to try and get the second thing in the array, or it's going to default to hot. So that actually lets people just say, you know, Reddit politics, and it'll automatically sort one way or the other. We don't want people to pass us an invalid sort order. So we're going to just like, again, do a check and default to hot if they do. You can actually have the web client add reactions, which is kind of cool. So a lot of times commands that are interfacing with third-party third-party service will take a while. And so it's nice to give some feedback to the users so that they can look at things. So that would be how you would do that. Making our API call as usual. We're doing some error handling. So basically, if our response has an error code on it that matches one of these, we're going to say something like, trying to access a private subreddit, or that subreddit doesn't exist. Looks like we've been rate limited. So a lot of stuff like this can be moved out into other objects. Check out the MVC branch if you're more interested. We're grabbing a lot more data now because we want to show more stuff. And then Slack actually has kind of a really cool interactive builder that you can use. So you kind of format your stuff like this. So you have like your top level text. You can add attachments. So if you've ever seen Slack messages that have kind of a bar on the side and a bunch of things and some fields, that's kind of what that looks like. And then we just post that. And so we're actually using the web client to post that message. And we're going to remove our hourglass and add a thumbs up. Just be like, sweet, and process and to go. So let's see how that works. So let's do programming. Let's get like, I'm a little wary of new. Let's go ahead and do top. Oh, that's true. That's not a real command. Need Reddit first. That's a little redundant, huh? Sweet. So now we've got kind of like I said, you saw the reaction. We're actually formatting it. So each of these attachments here kind of maps to what our little array of attachments looks like, right? So a post, we have a color, we have a title, it's a link, and then we're kind of putting these little fields in there. So what's the type? Is it a self or link post? What subreddit does it belong to? What's the score? And that sort of maps here, right? So these are those fields that you see. Here's the top post. We can go through and we can see kind of what is happening on Reddit. And that's really it. Like that's bots. Like again, this is sort of an example of a functional bot. I'm going to kind of walk through sort of advanced possibilities, just like kind of throw out ideas and things we can do, and then we'll just get started. Again, you'll be able to just check out this repo and do whatever you want with it. Cool. So what else is possible? So as you saw, that bot kind of is pretty simple. It responds to a message and makes a call to an API server and sends back some stuff. There's a lot of other things that you can do to make these more valuable. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this and show. So the first is, well, hopefully I remember all the word of this. So the first is you can add an API into your bots. This is an example I was working on at work, where I can basically add text and send stuff to its bot, right? So I basically have it talk to a Rails server that I control, and it can save stuff to a database, tells me who created it, and then I can actually come back and see all the interesting people that added. Right? So you can imagine using this to like set up a topic, like I want to speak at a meetup, here's what I want to speak about. Voila, we have like a really cool way to keep track of meetups. Another thing you can do, we should, hopefully we can. Another thing you can do is actually have kind of interactive messages. So this message knows how to respond to things that people are doing. So this is sort of an example of an onboarding bot. So it's teaching you like how to do all these things. It waits for you to respond, and then it says like, yeah, nice, great work. You share the message, you pin the message, all that stuff. So imagine a bot that is something that if someone joins our community, it says, hey, welcome to URUG. Here's the meetup page. Here's where you go to ask for help. Here's all the channels you should join. Here's the channels you should avoid, that kind of thing. Additionally, you can, with, again, having your own kind of Rails server, you can have it respond to webhooks. So this is sort of the example I was talking about earlier about the bot responding to webhooks. So I believe meetup.com actually has a webhook interface. So rather than you having to manually post the meetup link every time you create a new meetup, you could just have those auto posts directly to Slack, a little more automation. You'd also have it trigger off GitHub builds. You could have it trigger off whatever you want. Anything that has a webhook you can use. And then this one is one of my favorites. This is actually a Ruby example that I've linked in the deck. Slack recently rolled out the ability to do message menus. So you could actually do surveys through here. You could have someone introduce themselves. This is an example of the coffee pod, which again is pretty cool. Like imagine if you're looking for a mentor and you want someone specifically that said that they'd be willing to talk about JavaScript or about Ruby or about certain things. Well, you could select it and it would tell you, hey, here's the person you should talk to. And then finally, there's a concept of dialogues in Slack. I actually have never been able to get this to work yet. I've been trying to figure it out. It's not as well supported in Ruby. But here's an example of being able to actually request a Lyft ride directly from Slack. So Slack is consistently making updates to this API. It's gotten better and better and better and better. There's a lot of power there. So I kind of would leave you with this. What problems do we have as a community that we think a bot could help with? Maybe there are none. Maybe you're thinking of other problems. Maybe you want to invite someone back to a push-ups channel over and over again. I don't know. Whatever floats your boat. And how can we solve them together? So thank you, everyone. I have a bunch of resources in the deck. I'm going to post a GitHub link in eRoad. And if you need a bot token, talk to me. Hopefully we won't run out. But that's it. Feel free to hack away.
Cool. So while you're doing that, awesome job, Jason. Really appreciate it. You actually sold generators every time someone said someone's name. We had it hooked up to a Raspberry Pi so it would actually say it. The whole floor could hear it. So the marketing team was like, "Why are you guys so crude and crass?" And so we had fun with that.